Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to my channel. It may surprise some of you guys to know this, but I have never read through the Call of Cthulhu rulebook. I've played one of the editions maybe gosh, 6 or 7 years ago, whichever edition was current at that point. I played a bit of a solo introductory adventure for Call of Cthulhu, but I've never played the game other than that, and that barely counts. So this video is going to be a first impressions of the Call of Cthulhu rulebook, because I've never really cracked this open. Like, I've looked through the first 2 or 3 pages, just like the quite literal table of contents and the introduction, but I've never read through the book at all. I don't know the rules to it. I know the mythos really quite well. I love H.P. Lovecraft, and I love all of those stories. I used to play Arkham Horror with my family all the time when I was growing up. So I really love the Call of Cthulhu vibe, but I've never, ever checked it out. So anyway, if you guys are interested in, kind of hanging out with me while I go through these first impressions, feel free to hang out. I'm going to try to go through much of this book, although it is 449 pages, so I doubt I can get through the whole thing in this video in any sort of reasonable amount of time. But it's also one of those things where it's Halloween, well, in a couple of days for me, and so this is a perfect time to delve into something spooky like this. This is, first of all, I have to say, this is kind of a treat for me. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I've been meaning to put this video together for a while, and it's not really even much of a put together. It's just kind of me sitting here talking and hanging out. But, some of you might enjoy that. There's a whole bunch of dedications and acknowledgments and a lot of copyright information here, so this is a kind of a big, big process. And this is the 7th edition of the game now, which is kind of surprising to me. I don't know when the first edition came out of Call of Cthulhu, but I don't know. This looks really, really cool. Well, it says that just reading it right here, looks like back in 1980 was when the original Call of Cthulhu game was developed. Okay, so it's been around for quite some time now. The art in this book, though the little that I've seen of it, is great. It's really, really good. It's a lot of different styles, but that's okay because, many of the different H.P. Lovecraft stories have very different vibes. His writing is pretty similar, but, the stories set in the Dreamlands are very different than the stories set in Arkham, There's just a different quality to the different stories, so that works. That's a horrifying piece of art right there. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Wow. Sometimes H.P. Lovecraft has these passages that are just very, very striking, and of course this is one of his most famous. That line, the most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. I heard that well before I'd actually read the Call of Cthulhu. Welcome to Call of Cthulhu. It's a game of secrets, mysteries, and horror. I like those 3 things. This is a style of art here at the bottom of the right page that I really enjoy. It feels a little bit like, it's not quite the same, but it feels a little bit like those actual pulp horror novel covers. Just something about the particular style. It's, more hand-drawn. You can tell it's less, clean than a lot of those pulp horror covers, but it's just something about the vibe of it. It looks really much like those old ones, and I love that style. The pulp horror, the pulp adventure, those old pulp, dime book novel covers or whatever. I love those. An overview of the game. The aim of playing Call of Cthulhu is to have fun with your friends. Well, that's good. And to create a Lovecraftian story. One player takes the role of the game moderator, known as the Keeper of Arcane Lore, or the Keeper for short. I think it's a rule that every RPG has to have a new name for the GM, or the DM. I guess a lot of games do call them the GM, the Game Master, but I don't know. There's just it's kind of a tradition. You have to name the Game Master something. So you've got the Keeper and the Investigators. The Keeper picks a story to run. The game rules use dice. Most of the game is a verbal exchange. You use dice to determine if an action fails when a dramatic conflict presents itself. Okay, so far so good. Cooperation in competition. Gaming is a social pastime. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Working together cooperatively. The players and the keeper build an enjoyable and understandable world in which to play. Okay, so that's good to know. You're not competing with the players, nor are the players competing with the keeper. Makes sense. Winners and losers. In the Call of Cthulhu, there are no winners and losers in the standard sense. Play is usually cooperative. The keeper is impartial. Winning depends upon whether you succeed in your goal. Losing is if they fail to achieve it. Okay. The player investigators will continue to progress until their demise or retirement, whichever comes first. This is interesting. So, in the first couple of pages, while there's plenty of talk about, cooperation and storytelling, there isn't a lot of language so far about grim horror, like what cosmic horror is. There's not really a lot of conversation about your characters going to die. Like it's hinted at that your character is probably going to die or might die, right? Demise or retirement, whichever comes first. But my impression of Call of Cthulhu was always that it was this very your characters are going to go mad or you're going to lose them somehow. It's interesting that maybe that's a bad impression, or maybe that's an older edition of the game or something like that. But the emphasis here definitely seems to be storytelling. We're going to tell a good story, which is good, I think. I never played a role-playing game before. That's pretty cool. An extended, and this is quite extended, example of play. Wow. It's like 3 pages. That's really cool. A good extended how to play the game. All right, what this game covers. This new edition was originally published in 1981. Okay, there we go. And supported by Chaosium ever since then. So this is a revision with some significant changes while it's compatible with previous editions. Okay, I wonder how that works, how compatible it really is. Okay, if you play the game, you should also read some of the stories of H.P. Lovecraft. Lurking Fear, The Horror at Red Hook, The Color Out of Space, The Dunwich Horror, Shadow of Innsmouth, Dreams in the Witch House, The Haunter of the Dark, Shunned House, Call of Cthulhu. It's funny that they put the Call of Cthulhu so late in that list. The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, The Whisperer in Darkness, At the Mountains of Madness, and The Shadow Out of Time. That's a good list. I noticed they don't mention a few of his more out of favor short stories. Fair enough. But I think those are all pretty good ones. But it is funny to me that the Call of Cthulhu is late. I would imagine they would put that first, but they don't. They did the Lurking Fear first. Okay. What you need to play. This rulebook, role-playing dice, paper, pencils, and eraser, 2 or more people to play the game with, a quiet place, and 3 or 4 hours to play the game. 3 or 4 hours, that's a good amount of time. It's also pretty good that they give you that indication. Okay, what are the dice you need? Oh, the standard. Percentile, 4, 6, 8, 20. Oh, there's no D12. That's sad. It's my favorite die, I think. Well, is it my favorite? The D12 doesn't get that much love. That's why I like Sorcerers and Barbarians in 3rd edition. They were the D12 die classes. Sorcerers and Barbarians. Was it Sorcerers? I know at least Barbarians, but why do I think Sorcerers were the D12 class? Why does that come to mind? I actually can't think of why I'm thinking that. Why, if anyone who's watching this played 3rd edition knows what I might be referring to there, because I don't remember why I think Sorcerers are a D12 class. In 3rd edition D&D. Anyway, alright, moving on. Pretty standard stuff here. How to read the dice. This really does assume you haven't played role-playing games before, or at least it has to prepare you. That is an incredible piece of art. It's quite digital, but that's okay. It's funny to me to see the background as like a modern cityscape, because I don't think of Call of Cthulhu, or any Cthulhu stories as being modern. Or at least contemporary, I should say. They're modern, right, but not contemporary. I think of them as 1920s, 1930s. H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos. West of Arkham, the hills rise wild, and there are valleys with deep woods that no axe has ever cut. At the beginning of October, although not many people watched it, but I read through the entirety of The Color Out of Space here on the channel. I did a live reading through, and a couple people hung out, and we talked afterwards. It was really cool. I liked that a lot. But The Color Out of Space is one of my favorites of all of H.P. Lovecraft's stories. Okay, so it goes through him as a person. That's really interesting. Talks about him and the terminology that he uses before it gets into the mythos. So, that's really strange to me. That's really strange. You don't have like a background on, Gary Gygax and, the creators of Dungeons and Dragons. You don't have that at the beginning of every D&D book. You don't have a sort of biography of Robert E. Howard or J.R.R. Tolkien, right? Or the people who contributed to the fantasy genre. I guess that's because fantasy is more well known. Maybe that's it. But I don't know. This is like an extended Appendix N, basically, or like get to know the influence. I kind of like that. I should read through this particular description of H.P. Lovecraft and his history. I know a little bit about him, but anyway, Cthulhu mythos. What the mythos is, a general summary there. Although their interrelations are obscure, we know that some entities of the Cthulhu mythos are clearly superior or inferior in their powers. Gods are the mightiest, followed at some distance apparently by the great old ones. Depending on which author one reads, the universe is ruled by beings variously known as the elder gods, outer gods, or other gods. Only a few of these entities are known by name. The majority are both blind and idiotic in human terms. They are all extremely powerful alien beings, and some may be of extra-cosmic origin. The outer gods rule the universe and have little to do with humanity, except for Nyarlathotep. Humans meddling with those entities suffer for it, usually ending in madness or death. Nyarlathotep. How does he relate to the Yellow God again? Or the Yellow King? Is he the Yellow King? I always forget. Nyarlathotep, I think he relates to him. Is he like his vessel or his herald or something like that? Or is it the other way around, that the Yellow King is... The King in Yellow, I should say. Is he the... or is it Hastur that I'm thinking of? Maybe it's all the same. I haven't read those stories in a while. I need to go back to those. Chapter 3, Creating Investigators. Okay. Here we go. How to create a character. Characteristic. Okay, so you generate characteristics. Those are attributes. One of 8 numbers that create the foundations of an investigator. For the game, each characteristic represents an aspect of the investigator. Intelligence, dexterity, and so on. Okay. So you roll for your characteristics. You roll 3d6 and multiply by 5 to generate your characteristic. It generates a number between 15 and 90%. Okay. Okay. That's how you do... That's strength. That's con. Oh, they're different here. Size is 2d6 times 6 and multiplied by 5. Dex is 3d6 multiplied by 5. 3d6 multiplied by 5. Intelligence, 2d6 plus 6 and multiplied by 5. Okay, so the different stats are generated differently. Or the different characteristics, I should say. And size and education are up there with power, intelligence, appearance, dexterity, constitution, and strength. That's kind of fun. I like games where there are different methods of generation for different things. Different abilities or things like that. There was a game a while back. I'm sure you can still get it on DTRPG, and I know that Questing Beasters reviewed it. It's called the Rad Hack, and it's like a very small little splat book, there we go, of an RPG about post-apocalyptic wastelands. And in that, there were 4 classes, and it was like human, mutant, robot, and I forget, maybe there was like alien or something. I forgot what the 4th one was. But anyway, each of the races or classes, whatever you call them, they each had their own method of generating stats. So robots were point buy, humans were like 3d6 in order. Mutants, I think you just rolled a d20 for every single stat. And then there was like a psionic character or something, and they rolled like 3d6 for their physical stats and like 4d6 dropped the lowest for their mental stats or something like that. It's kind of cool. I like games that do that. It's a good idea. Anyway, okay, so what do we have? Let's look through these characteristics. We have strength, which is probably straightforward. Muscle, yeah. Constitution is health, vigor, and vitality. Makes sense. Size is weight and height into a single number. It's really odd that that's separate from strength and con. To see over a wall, to squeeze through a small opening, or even to judge whose head might be sticking up out of the grass, use size. Okay, so use size to determine hit points and damage bonuses and build. But you can lose size to indicate the loss of a limb. Although it says lowering dex is more often the solution. Weird. That's a very strange stat. Now, some of you have probably played Call Call of Cthulhu quite a lot. So I'm sure you could tell me like how often size comes into the game. Maybe it comes in a lot. It just sounds like a funny statistic. And for it not to be static, like in D&D, right? You have small, medium, or large. You have some different size categories, but for it to be like a number, that's funny. Dexterity makes sense what dexterity is. Appearance, that's okay. Physical attractiveness and personality, so it's like charisma. So we have strength, con, dex, and charisma, and then we have intelligence. And then we have power, which is their force of will, because it's like wisdom. Yeah, aptitude for and resistance to magic. And then you have education, a measure of their formal and factual knowledge. And that's different than intelligence, which is their ability to learn, remember, analyze information, and solve complex puzzles. I can see why, like, size and education are the ones that stand out as different here, other than the standard 6. And I know they're slightly different than the standard 6. Strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, but education and size are the ones that stand out, and I can see why most games don't have an education or a size category. Right? Because size seems like it could just be solved by dex, con, and strength, depending on the circumstance. Or like a static number, like your medium size. And education seems like it could easily be rolled up into intelligence. But it says here that their difference is education measures retained information, not the intelligent application of that information. An investigator without education would be like a newborn baby or an amnesiac. Huh. Probably curious and credulous. That's really interesting there. Oh, and then we have luck, which is 3d6 multiplied by 5. Okay. So we have a luck score here. Age makes you weaker, smaller, but you can roll twice if you're young. I see. Deduct 5 points among strength and size. Deduct 5 points from education. Roll twice to generate a luck score. So you're luckier when you're young. Okay, now, I know I'm going to learn what an improvement check is somewhere, but I'd already missed that. I don't know if I already missed that, what an improvement check is. Okay, well maybe we'll see it later. Once the percentage values for each characteristic have been determined, the next step is to write it in the half and fifth key values. So you have something divide by 2 and divide by 5. Okay, so sometimes it'll say, I see. Sometimes you have to succeed by half or by a fifth or something like that. Okay. You get damage bonuses and based on your build and strength. Strength plus size will give you a damage bonus and a build bonus. It will tell you what your build is. Huh. Strength plus size. Hit points are con plus size. Okay, so you could have a very healthy small person or a very, very weak or like sickly big person, and your hit points would correspond. Your movement rate. Your movement rate depends upon your age. Or at least it affects that. That's cool. I like that. Your occupation. Does it say? Okay. And the actual occupation has a limited effect on your game. It's at the basis of your starting skills and helping to. So occupations are typically Lovecraftian. Okay. So you get some occupations, and they give you some skills. Gotcha. And the skills, I assume, give you bonus to your base. Or you use your base abilities or something like that. Well, we'll see. Okay, so here's how to quick reference to your character sheet. Okay, so you decide your skills and you allocate skill points. See, this feels more like RPGs when I was a kid. When I first started to play RPGs, the first game that I played was MERP, Middle-earth Role-Playing. And for that, there was a lot of, like, picking your ranks and going through skill points and, assigning them to different kinds of things, like one-handed weapons or two-handed weapons or, long bows or short bows or slings, and they were all different. And, and then that was also like tracking. You had to put in a certain number of ranks in tracking. That was like 3rd edition D&D 2, where you had lots and lots of skill points, and you're always calculating skills, and there were not cross-class skills. There might have been cross-class skills, but there were certainly like skill synergies and things like that, I remember. 3rd edition. 3rd edition was a good system. I should go back to it at some point. So, okay, you have your occupation skills, you have your personal interests, weapons and firearms skills, and your credit rating. That's your money, your living standard. That makes sense. What your numbers mean. So 0 is you're enfeebled, 15 or so is you're puny and weak, 50 is average human strength, 90 is one of the strongest people I've ever met, 99 is a world-class Olympic weightlifter, human maximum 99%. 140 is beyond human strength, 200 is monstrous strength. Like Glaaki. Okay. That's really helpful, actually. It tells you, like, gives you a sense of the different ranges. That makes sense. Harvey Walters, here's an example character. You create a backstory, some sample occupations. Oh, I see the Investigator Handbook provides more details for many more. You have the antiquarian, the artist, the athlete, the author, the clergy member, the criminal, the dilettante, the doctor, the drifter. Wow, there's quite a few, actually. These are just the sample ones, of course, and it says that there are more in that, which makes sense because the characters in, H.P. Lovecraft books are people from all over the world in all sorts of different positions. And that's one of the cool things about cosmic horror is that it's kind of just like it can pop up anywhere for almost any group of people. Yeah, it sometimes very often deals with antiquarians or, clergy or soldiers or doctors or something like that. But sometimes it's just farmers or it's just people in the city. A lawyer gets caught up in some weird, case that deals with some creepy cult and then suddenly he's in it. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do there. Whenever I play or whenever I read any H.P. Lovecraft or Call of Cthulhu, it's funny, my mind goes straight to one of the strongest examples of cosmic horror that I've ever encountered in a video game would be, and that is, of course, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, which was for the Nintendo GameCube. That game was awesome. Really, really good. So this style of art is very, very, not jarring, maybe that's the wrong way of putting it, but the two styles of art right side by side are very, very different. I like this style in its own place, and I like this style in its own place to the left and the right, but I'm not sure that it looks super great together, I have to say. Like on facing pages. I'm not sure I like that so much. So it's a skill-based game, which is cool. I like skill-based games rather than class-based games, right? So your background really gives you a bunch of skills rather than like a class. I really do like class-based or skill-based games. Pick some traits. Okay. D10 traits. Ambitious, a good reputation, loyal, ladies' man, good cook, gambler. You get some living standards. A quick reference for fifths and halves. That's cool. Nice if you can't do some quick math. Which is good for me. I'm not a math teacher. Alrighty. So that's how to create characters. Here's your skills. Mystery attracts mystery. That's a great piece of art right there. I like this little guy hanging out on top of the pillar here. Yeah, that's a great piece of art. It's not... The color blending actually doesn't make it feel very, very menacing to me. I mean, the details look menacing. You know what's funny is I can totally imagine these pillars being straight. But then, of course, when you look at them at a certain angle, you realize they're not straight. But then, of course, they are straight. It sounds like something from one of the stories. Okay, your skill definitions. So, once again, how do you actually play the game? That's probably in the other book, right? This is the Warden's book, or the Keeper's book. I'm sure that the player's book is actually where I should have started. But it's a percentile game, which means I think, right? You guys have to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's a percentile game of rolling under. Let me go back. Because I think they mention it with the dice here. Well, maybe not. But the fact that, yeah, reading percentile dice. Here you go. That's just how to read the dice. Oh, never mind. Yeah, I think it's a roll under system. Now, again, you guys are going to probably laugh at me. But again, I really haven't... I've never played this before. But that would make sense, right? If you are... you have percentiles next to your skills, and you're going to be rolling a D percentile die. Seems like you're going to be rolling under. And you want to have a higher number, so it's going to be a roll under system. Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're 99%, you basically cannot fail. Yeah, there it is. I just saw it. Okay, good. The investigators are trying to crack a numerical code. The keeper calls for a cryptography skill roll. A player lacking cryptography asks if they can use their mathematics skill instead. The keeper allows the roll at an increased difficulty level. A regular success was required when using cryptography, a roll equal to or under the skill. So a hard success, a roll equal to or under half the skill, is required when using mathematics. Cool. Okay, so that's a pretty simple way of doing it. You just have the skill. So if it's an easy one, you roll under your ability, your skill, I should say. If it's a hard one, then you roll under. Regular or hard. And extreme is that fifth. That makes sense. You've got to roll a fifth under your ability. That's really tough. So that means at its best for an extreme check, you're only ever going to be able to have a 1 in 5 chance of success if you have a 99th percentile chance. That's pretty unlikely. A 1 in 5th for an extreme check. The best you can get for a hard check is 50%. So what that tells me is that you just don't want to roll unless you're in an area which is very easy for you. And I assume that part of the keeper's job is going to be to make sure that you don't get easy rolls all the time. Okay. Now, I see that many of these already have a percentile. I wonder if that's where you start, or if that's what it is automatically at. Like you always have a 20% chance of using a handgun if you don't have the skill. You always have a 1% chance of doing forensics if you don't have the skill. You always have a 10% chance of using a flamethrower if you haven't used them. Yeah, I wonder about that. Seems like it would be, but it could also be something else. I didn't see very clearly. So it's a discussion of all the different skills and what they do. Okay, that's cool. I'm just going to skip through much of this because it's less interesting to me. The particulars of what Read Lips does, I kind of know how that works. Once I know how the system works, I kind of know what the skills will do. Okay, the game system. I have always believed that strange, inaccessible worlds exist at our very elbows, and now I believe I have found a way to break down the barriers. I am not joking. I think that last little "I am not joking" should have been taken out of the quote. It actually kind of undercuts it. I have found a way to break down the barriers would have been awesome. Just right there. Okay, so when to roll dice, skill rolls, how to determine the difficulty level. It's interesting that they wait until now to describe what a skill roll is and how to, well, maybe it's just simply the case that if you have the player's book or something like that, if there is a player's book, I think there is, then you're going to have more rules there. Okay, so you can push the roll. Pushing a skill roll provides the player with a second and final attempt. Pushing the roll is funny to me. I get it that it's in systems, especially games like Call of Cthulhu, where, terrible stuff does happen and your character dies and all that stuff. But pushing the roll is a funny idea. It's like, it feels very meta to me, because in-game, of course your character is probably going to be trying to succeed to the best of his ability on the first roll. So, when the keeper or the GM says, yes, you can push the roll, it always felt to me that, I don't know, I've never played a game where pushing the roll has... Actually, that's not true. I have played a game where pushing the roll was allowed. Sharp Swords... No, it was Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells. You can push the roll, and I think you can push the roll in that game. Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells. And my players did it, and it felt a little bit... Not that my players were children, but it felt a little bit like when I'm playing a game with a kid and they lose or they miss, they fail, and they say, can I do it again? And you go, sure. That's fine. Try again. You're playing something with a little kid and they roll, playing Candyland, and they roll like a 4 and they needed an 8 to win, and they say, or a 6 to win. They say, can I roll again? Yeah, sure, okay, you can roll again. It feels a little bit like that whenever I play a game with pushing the roll. Because it's like, well, you're already putting in maximum effort. And I guess you could say, well, no, you didn't put in maximum effort, but why didn't you do that then? Your character should have put in maximum effort the first time. I don't know. It feels very meta to me. Foreshadowing failure. So tell the player in two circumstances why you should foreshadow the consequences. So to increase the danger, highlight the drama, highlight the danger, increase the drama, or because they ask to clarify so they can gauge the risk. That makes sense. If you fail and you detail what will happen, that can definitely be effective. I've actually used that quite a lot, and I tend to use that more and more as I DM. I tell players, first of all, what they have to roll. I give them the number that they have to roll, and I often tell them what will happen if they fail, especially if it's like a choice. Like they're like, hey, can I swing across on the chandelier to land on the other side and attack him from behind? And then I'll say things, like, oh yeah, okay, that'll be a DC 15, and if you fail, you'll fall prone and your turn will end. But if you succeed, you'll have advantage on your next attack next round, or something like that, something like that. Or you can attack him this round and you'll have advantage. Okay, failed dice rolls and sudden endings. When possible, try to avoid an outcome that will end the game. Okay. Instead of a sudden death, have it be a setback, or they're taken captive, or someone makes a deal, or they faint. It is perfectly Lovecraftian for a character to faint. That's true. That does happen a lot in H.P. Lovecraft stories. People pass out, or they lose their sense and they come to later. So this book really is, focused on helping a GM run a game, and they're pretty thorough. Yeah, it's like this is a lot of advice for how to run, not just this game, but almost any RPG, but specifically this game, of course. Combat. It's a very interesting piece. This one's not as well. I don't like it as much as a lot of the others that I've seen so far. Combat, fist fights, maneuvers. This is a really interesting one. I do like. I mean, it makes sense that in a game like H.P. Lovecraft, you're going to have a lot of. Does it make sense you're going to have a lot of combat? Wow, look at that combat flowchart. Wow. Combat takes damage from a single wound. A character takes damage from a single wound. If the damage is less than half their maximum hit points, it's regular damage. First aid, which will later heal 1 hit point, or medicine, which heals D3 hit points. If the damage is equal to more than half of their maximum hit points, then it's a major wound. They fall prone, they have to make a con roll. If they fail, they fall unconscious. If the damage is more than their maximum hit points, they just fall dead. If their hit points fall to 0, has the major wound been taken? If the answer is no, then they are unconscious. If the answer is yes, then they are dying. Huh. It's actually fairly easy to follow the flowchart, but it's funny that you kind of need a flowchart like this. But the reason I say it's kind of funny to me that a game like H.P. Lovecraft has a complicated combat system is that I don't tend to think of combat in the H.P. Lovecraft stories. Like, whenever characters fight in H.P. Lovecraft, it seems to me either they win, right, or like they're fighting humans and so they're kind of gunning them down or something like that, and it's pretty easy, or they're getting just eviscerated and going mad. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like there's an awful lot of like back and forth in H.P. Lovecraft stories. So it's funny that there are this many rules. Like this much, like the difference between automatic fire and point blank range and aiming bonuses and fast moving target rules and target size rules and reloading firearms and the difference between handgun and firing multiple shots with extra penalties. And it's this all these rules, and this sort of feels like it. These rules feel like, to me, the kind of rules that build up over editions. Now, this is the 7th edition, and it says this is compatible with games that came before. So I would be willing to bet that many of these rules are not like brand new to 7th edition, but it's like, no, we've been playing this way for a long time. I don't know that. Because it seems to me that like a lot of this stuff feels like rule creep. Armor revisited. Concealed damage. Bracing. Complete concealment. Point blank revisited. Poisons. how to do chases. This feels more this feels more H.P. Lovecraft to me, combat. I guess I could see, because here's the thing: if you go back to weapons for a minute here, different kinds of forms of damage. You are in H.P. Lovecraft stories very often the characters are often fighting, and it makes sense if you're going to be playing an RPG, or maybe you're going to emphasize more action than in a regular H.P. Lovecraft story or cosmic horror story. Chase rules, that's cool. I think chase rules, that makes a lot more sense to me, to have a more detailed system for chases, because it seems like that's more often than not players are going to be running from stuff or trying to catch up with someone. Catch the cultist who's escaping, or being chased by the creature who's jumping through the roof, from roof to roof or something like that. Yeah, exactly, art like that. A hunting horror chases two cars on a mountain road, things like that. That feels very in tone for me. Wow, lots of different vehicle reference charts. Dirigibles, helicopters, tanks, steam trains, modern trains, a 4-horse carriage and a horse with rider, a bicycle. That's a great piece right there. I like that one. Actually, both of them. His steamboats ramming Cthulhu. That's pretty bold, man. Sanity, here we go. But I must try to tell what I thought I saw that night under the mocking yellow moon. Saw surging and hopping down the Rowley Road in plain sight in front of me as I crouched among the wild branches of that desolate railway cut. Shadow over them. Sanity. Sanity losses, that's another thing that I loved so much about that game. Oh gosh, what's it called? I just already said it earlier tonight. Eternal Darkness. There we go, Eternal Darkness. That game is brilliant because it had a sanity meter, and the more your sanity went down, the more crazy the game became. It started off with the screen like changing the angle very subtly, so you didn't notice, but you were kind of looking at an angle. And then random stuff would happen, like, statues would stare at you and their heads would move as you walked past. Sometimes, you'd come into a room and the monsters would be way bigger or smaller than they should be, or there'd be tons of monsters and then suddenly they'd all vanish. The game had a lot of cool sanity effects, and some of them were super meta. Like, it was, the game came out when there were tons of CRTVs, still, CRTVs. And it would have, like, suddenly the game would just mute, and it would look like that green bar that a lot of TVs had that would just slowly go down and the game would mute. And you're like, what? I'm not muting the game. And you look around for the remote. It's like, why is the... And then again, it would flash, and the sound would come back. Or, yeah, there was a bunch of really cool effects like that. Your character would just die if they walked into a new room, or it would be like game file corrupted. That's one of them that I remember. It was like save state corrupted. Please reset. And you're like, what? And then the game fixes itself because your characters are going crazy, and it starts to affect you. A bout of madness. Okay, so let me go back to this. How does insanity work? You have different kinds of insanity. You have sanity points and sanity rolls. In published Call of Cthulhu scenarios, sanity loss rolls are shown as two numbers, or rolls separated by a slash. For instance, sanity 1, 1d4 plus 1. The number on the left is the number of sanity points lost if the sanity roll succeeds. The die roll on the right is the number of sanity points lost if the sanity roll has failed. Ooh. So you're always going to, whenever a sanity roll is required, you're always losing sanity. It can either be more or less. I like that. So it's basically, it actually reminds me a lot of, so I did a sanity system for my own game, my own Strahd game, Curse of Strahd. And the sanity system I did was basically just automatic sanity loss. Players would lose sanity whenever something horrifying happened to them. There was no check. They just lost a d4. So it's kind of like that. But sometimes it says, maybe 0 or 1d4, in which case you don't lose any sanity. But I think that it's more effective to just have characters automatically lose sanity. It feels more out of their control, which is kind of the point. So insanity is perhaps going to be the main way your investigators are going to drop out. First, the insanity begins with a brief bout of madness, during which the player's control of their investigator is compromised. Interesting. Second, the bout of madness is followed by a period of underlying insanity, during which the player retains full control of their investigator. However, the investigator is prone to delusions, phobias, and further bouts of madness. Third, the final phase is recovery. Temporary insanity. If an investigator loses 5 or more sanity points from a single source of sanity loss, sufficient emotional trauma has been suffered that the keeper must test the investigator's sanity. The keeper asks for an intelligence roll. If the roll has failed, the investigator has repressed the memory, a trick the mind uses to protect itself, and does not become insane. Perversely, if the intelligence roll succeeds, the investigator recognizes the full significance of what has been seen or experienced and goes temporarily insane. So that's really interesting. You don't want to succeed the intelligence roll. You want to fail. That's very, very much in line with H.P. Lovecraft. I approve of that rule. That it is less effective to your player to succeed and to learn the truth and to keep your wits and to see the full extent of what has happened. That is really good. That's the kind of rule that I am all about in an RPG. Flavorful in-game rule. That's great. So far, everything that I've seen has been pretty standard. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. It's just like any RPG. But any RPG that has a flip of the, you don't want to succeed the check, the smarter your character, the more likely you are to go insane. That's brilliant. And it fits so much with H.P. Lovecraft. Very often, man, that's really good. Because very often in games, the more mentally powerful a character, the less likely they are to go insane. Right? Whatever system of sanity you might have, it often depends upon having lower stats, right? So if you have lower wisdom or lower intelligence, you're more likely to go insane. But it seems like here, the higher your intelligence, the more likely you are to go insane. Super cool. On losing a fifth or more of their current sanity points in one game day, the investigator becomes indefinitely insane. A day in this instance is defined by the keeper, usually lasting until the investigator reaches a place of safety. Permanent insanity. When sanity points are reduced to 0, the investigator is permanently and incurably insane and ceases to be a player character. In the real world, all insanity is indefinite insanity, since no one in real life can hope to predict the future as accurately as the Call of Cthulhu keeper can. That's a good point. The effects of insanity. First, the investigator experiences a short bout of madness. So what is this bout of madness? On becoming insane, the investigator experiences a bout of madness. While experiencing a bout of madness, the investigator loses all self-control. In game terms, this means that control of the investigator is handed from the player to the keeper for a short amount of real-world time. It is up to the keeper whether this control takes the form of dictating specific actions, or if it means giving the player guidelines on how to play out the madness for however long it may last. I would always choose option B there. I would say to my player, okay, this is your new goal, and this is your new requirement. You have to behave in this way, and I would let them do it. That's way more fun. I've had great experiences with that before. I've told my players, back in 5th edition, I told one of my players, okay, your new bond and flaw, your new ideal bonds and flaw are this for a short time. And they have to behave that way. It was great. If the player is a good player, they'll play along. Of course, if they're really, really min-maxy, they'll still try to find ways of making their madness work to their advantage. I could see you just having to take control of a character, but hopefully not. On the upside, an investigator cannot lose any further sanity while experiencing a bout of madness. Okay, that's cool. So they have to change their descriptions, their ideologies, their beliefs. They're significant people. They're meaningful locations. You change the character permanently for each bout of madness. That's cool. I like that. Then you have some insanity, phobia, and mania. Oh, a good list of phobias. That's great. Megalophobia. Telephonophobia. Taurophobia. Taphophobia. That's the fear of being buried alive. I think that's suffered by Edgar Allan Poe? I mean, I know it was certainly experienced by many of his stories. There's, of course, the Cask of Amontillado, I think. And then there's the one about the guy who just has that phobia. Taphophobia, yeah. And then sample manias. Blutomania. Man, I should steal this list, because these two lists, because I like to give my players permanent effects when they go insane in the game that I use. I'm going to use these pages. Pages 160, 161. That's amazing. That's great. And you have delusions and reality checks. In Eternal Darkness, there's a great insanity scene. One of the characters, ooh, that's creepy. Oh, that's really creepy. So one of the characters in Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem is this. He's like a plantation owner, and he realizes that his house has been built on the mouth of like another world, and it's possessing his servants, or maybe it's just replacing his servants with these horrible creatures that look human but they're not. And so he goes around and kills them all, and then he has to go down and beneath the earth, and he sees this huge cyclopean city, and it's full of these horrible creatures, and he knows that there's just danger and just, they're coming, they're this horrible evil down there. And so he goes back to the surface to get help, and he tells everybody, and everyone else just thinks he's gone totally crazy and murdered his whole plantation. So they throw him into an insane asylum. And it's great because he's not crazy, but you can also see exactly why they think he is. And of course, he is kind of insane by the time he comes back to the surface, because just like in H.P. Lovecraft stories, to see the truth is to go insane. And so he has seen the truth, and that has driven him insane. And so when everyone sees that he's crazy, they're not wrong. But he's also not wrong. It's a great moment, and it's really, really effective as he's screaming out through the asylum door, and it kind of pulls away. It's a great moment. Magic. Now, if magic is anything like it is in Arkham Horror, magic, I assume, is going to mess you up, insanity, and maybe even physically, if you fail. Wow, magic is really short. Look at that. What is that? 10 pages? Just about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 pages on magic. I would have expected more than that. Interesting. Investigators don't always sleep easy. That's actually a pretty creepy picture. I don't know why that's so creepy. I think it's just the expression on his face, but I like that. That's a very different kind of picture. How to create your investigators. Ooh, that's a great image. That's a great one. Really, really good. Yeah, so some of these pictures are not my favorite. Some of the styles are not my favorite. Some of them are pretty cool, though. Using Lovecraftian themes. Okay, let me go back a little bit. Here we go. Scaring the players. Let me start here. The horror genre can be a lot of fun, right down to pounding hearts and sweating brows. It is part of human nature to find your pleasure in being scared, as long as being scared is not for real. Of course, actually scaring anyone is rare in a game consisting of dice and paper, but be assured it can happen. The game's setting is ostensibly that of the real world, with which we are intimately familiar. As you play, strive to make the world realistic, so your players feel at home in it. If a monster appeared in real life, most of us would be scared, but a player is unlikely to be scared even if a monster enters through his or her investigator's front door. The players know that this is a horror game, and is expecting monsters. Instead of using a monster to scare a player, try to confound the player's expectations of how things work in the real world. Consider the following event as, for example, the investigator says goodbye to his wife as she leaves the house for work, and then 5 minutes later, his wife walks down the stairs in her dressing gown. Don't provide an explanation. If you can induce cognitive dissonance, holding two conflicting ideas simultaneously in the player, it will open the door to fear as the player's mind struggles to make sense of the situation. We get scared when we can't make sense of things, especially when those things that don't make sense are the mundane, everyday things that we know we should understand. Pacing works hand in hand with confounding expectations to create a sense of escalating tension and terror. Present the players with problems, and when the players show signs of coping with the problems, toss in an additional complication. Look through your scenario, consider the problems that will arise for the investigators, and be on the lookout for more as you play. That's good advice. I really like that idea of making the mundane horrific by making it weird, by making it not make sense. by switching their expectations. That's cool. I've actually found that there are certain players that are actually pretty open to being scared in an RPG. As long as you set the tone properly, you speak in the right tone of voice, and what you're describing is just disturbing enough, but not... What I found is you just don't describe the thing. Hint at it, and let their imagination do the rest, and very often your players will be scared. Not like... What would I say? Not terrified, but horrified. You know, I think it's very difficult to create terror in your players, right? Terror being like adrenaline and the fight or flight instinct. Like that's I would imagine very rare at any kind of table. But I actually don't think it's very hard to develop dread in your players. I actually think it's probably quite easy. If you're a half decent GM, you can create dread in your players, especially if they're playing a horror game. They're there to be, you know, creeped out a little bit. So I like that. Using the optional rule, spontaneous use of the Cthulhu mythos skill. Entering the world of the Cthulhu mythos. Ending a story. That's good. Good advice on how to end a story. Investigator death, epilogues. Interesting. So it says, in some instances, death, and even the death of the whole investigator group, can be a dramatic and memorable outcome. But the death of an investigator knocks a player out of the game until such time as a new investigator can be created and introduced to the story. Don't be too ready to deal out death if other interesting options are possible. Endeavoring to make the game an enjoyable experience for everyone is far more important than being a slave to realism. Remember, this is a horror game, and the threat of both death and insanity should accompany the investigator's every step. An investigator is controlled by a player, and there are only two outcomes that permanently end this: death and permanent insanity. You may be tempted towards leniency when it comes to dealing out damage, but be mindful that in most cases accumulated damage leads to unconsciousness rather than death. Players are encouraged to form an attachment to their investigators, and the death of an investigator should always be a significant event. Don't be surprised if a player welcomes the death of an investigator, especially if the death is heroic, meaningful, or will simply make a great anecdote. So, really, very clearly then, the emphasis is not on death. It's on getting knocked out or insanity, and even that isn't the emphasis. The emphasis here is on everybody having fun, playing a game together, and then having a cool story that is told. I get that. So, really, in my mind, then, I kind of have to put this game into a slightly different category than what I was putting it into before. In my mind, I was thinking Call of Cthulhu was going to be a brutal game where everyone goes insane and dies, trying to deal with a horrifying thing. I'm thinking more slasher, right, where the players are the various characters of a slasher or something like that, or a horror movie, right, where it might be horrific. Yeah, like The Thing, right? I guess I was picturing like The Thing, where the players are the various people in the outposts as they're getting, destroyed one by one. But really, it's more like the players are Childs and oh gosh, what's Kurt Russell's character's name in that? I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Oh, dang it. I can't remember what his name is. Regardless, the guys who make it to the very end. It's more like the players are them. So you're going to not take it easy on them, but you might take it easy on their sanity, and you might avoid situations where they're going to die if the emphasis here is on telling a full, complete story. Yeah. Using Lovecraftian themes: fear, corruption, cosmic horror. There it is, The King in Yellow, an avatar of Hastur. One of my favorite parts of one of my favorite TV shows, or at least the first season of that TV show, was True Detective. I loved the first season. After that, I wasn't too into it, but the first season was super, super good, at least when I first watched it. And there was this weird, sudden H.P. Lovecraft theme. Suddenly, like, as I was watching, I was like, wait a minute, what? I mean, from the first episode, there's, like, cults and stuff, but I thought it was just going to be, like, mostly just dealing with human nature and, creepy people and bad people doing stuff, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, there's, like, the Yellow King. It's like, what? We're dealing with H.P. Lovecraft here? I really like that show. Again, season 1, I really liked. This is something that I really, really like. This little window here. It says, a published scenario describes the room as follows. Main bedroom. A comfortable bedroom with a large window overlooking the rear garden. Clothes lie scattered across the floor, and the room would benefit from a good clean. A wooden bedside cabinet contains a copy of the Cortes de Ghouls in a locked drawer. Your notes might reduce to this too. Main bedroom, grubby, hidden Cultist de Ghouls. That's great. That's great advice. It's funny that they say the published scenario is going to be basically useless. Not useless, but they're quite literally saying, yeah, published scenarios are going to include a bunch of useless information that's fluff. You don't need that. All you need is this bullet point list. That's funny. Like, yes, I agree. That is all you need to run an adventure. Bullet point lists. You don't need this stuff. Ooh, Tomes of Eldritch Lore. Coming up on an hour in this video, so I don't think I'm going to go through too much more of this. I think I get the sense of the game, though. Wow. Interesting. Okay, the King in Yellow. Here we go. English, translator unknown, circa 1895. The original is in French, apparently. But that edition was seized and destroyed by the Third Republic just after publication. The English edition is a thin black octavo volume, across the front cover of which is embossed a large yellow sign. Until the book has been read, the sign has no effect on the viewer except to imbue a sense of curiosity. After reading the book or after having come in contact with anyone or anything from Carcosa, viewing the sign costs 0/1d6 sanity points to see for one time only. The text is an ambiguous, dreamlike play that opens readers to madness. Uniquely, readers cannot opt to disbelieve what is written there. Those of an artistic bent will feel compelled to reread the play. If the book results in insanity, the reader should become obsessed with Carcosa and the King in Yellow. See the yellow sign on page 322. Sanity loss 1d10. Cthulhu Mythos, +1 or +4 percentiles. Mythos rating 15. Study 1 week. Suggested spells, none. Now, many of these are mentioned. Nameless cults, for example, that's mentioned in one of H.P. Lovecraft's stories. Of course, the King in Yellow is mentioned. The Necronomicon by the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred. Abdul al-Hazred is also the name of the bad guy, I think, in King's Quest VI. Of course, that was probably named after this, rather than the other way around. I love this. So look, the Necronomicon there's a Greek translation, an Arabic original, a Latin translation, an English translation. Well, actually, then there's also the Sussex manuscript. That's awesome. That's really cool that there's a whole bunch of different, and I see Nameless Cults is like that too. 3 versions follow. That's great. I love stuff like that when you get actual lore built in that is from different texts and different translations and different editions. That's really cool, and this is a great piece of art too. I love that one. Mythos Tomes. The Grimoire. Oh, these are spells. Okay, so the spell section is larger. That's good to know. Yes, the how to do spells is earlier, but then there's a huge section of spells. Well, should I say huge? No, not huge, but big enough, looks like. Artifacts and alien devices. Monsters, beasts, and alien gods. Ooh, this is going to be good. It is absolutely necessary for the peace and safety of mankind that some of Earth's dark, dead corners and unplumbed depths be let alone, lest sleeping abnormalities wake to resurgent life, and blasphemously surviving nightmares squirm and splash out of their black lairs to newer and wider conquests. Blasphemous, eldritch, there are certain words that Lovecraft just loved. Oh, I love this. And as you can see, the little scale, the human's there for scale. Man, Ithaq was huge. I never thought he was that big. That's great. The Hydra. Yogg-Sothoth. The Elder Thing. And Great Cthulhu, of course. Oh, good. Chaosium pronunciations. Looks like you can take the Chaosium right there as well. Ah, the Bayaki, the Chthonians. The colors out of space. Wow, you can fight them? Do they have hit points? No. Okay, good. I was about to say, you should not be able to kill the colors out of space. Yeah. Wow, that's kind of cool though. The crawling ones. Dagon and Hydra, they're unique beings. Do they have hit points? Yeah, they do. 55 hit points. You can just kill Dagon? Does Cthulhu have hit points? This is the big question. Great Cthulhu. Is he in here? If Cthulhu has a hit as maybe I missed him already, did I? There's the Chthonian. No, either he's later or he's not there. I'm gonna look ahead. Does Cthulhu have? Yes. Okay, here we go. Great Cthulhu hit points. Yeah, he has 160 hit points. Okay, you can kill Cthulhu. Theoretically, right? If he's got hit points, you can kill him. That's what they always say, right? That's what, if you guys remember Spoonie, right? Noah Antweiler, Spoonie the Bard. If you stat it, they will kill it. The fact that Cthulhu has stats means you can kill him. Players will kill him. I suppose that is possible if you can kill the Great Old Ones. Ithaqua. Hastur the Unnameable. Does he have hit points? 150 hit points. He's weaker than Cthulhu. Now, granted, 1d10 or 1d100 sanity points. So it seems like you're going to get just wrecked by him. He's got 600 strength, 1,000 constitution, but I don't know, man. If they have stats, you can kill them. All right, well, I'm not going to go through the rest of this book. It has another 120 pages, and I've gone through a whole bunch of it. But I'm really happy that I did. The Call of Cthulhu, well, now I know what the book's like. Now I know what the book's like, and I get a sense, I think, of what it is, like what it would, well, do I know what it would like to play a game here? No, I don't think so. Not yet. I think I should. I think I should play a game of Call of Cthulhu. Maybe I'll do that over the holiday. Maybe I'll do that over Christmas or something, or Thanksgiving or something like that. When I have a break, I might do like a short adventure of Call of Cthulhu. If any of you guys know like great Call of Cthulhu adventures that are pre-made, maybe let me know if you would. Because Call of Cthulhu is, yeah, it's one of those things that like I should play at least one game of it. And now I know, I think, the basic rules. Doesn't seem too hard to run. Doesn't seem too hard to play. There's a lot of rules for fighting. I'll have to read up on those, because that seemed a little complicated. But other kinds of rules, like the rest of the rules I was looking through didn't seem too bad. Just the combat, I'll have to make sure I know what's going on there. It seems cool, and there's a couple really flavorful rules. The fact that they built in higher intelligence makes you more likely to go insane. That alone makes me really like this book, this rule set. But one of the issues I have with any genre game is that your players mostly know, either they know the genre, in which case they kind of know what they're expecting. And for horror, that's, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess you go to see horror movies and you can still be surprised and scared. So maybe that's not a problem. I was about to say, it seems like if you know you're playing a horror game, then you're going to be prepared. Players are going to be prepared. Whereas if they don't know they're playing a horror game, or they don't know the degree to which it's horrifying, then they're going to be more surprised. But, I don't know. We played Curse of Strahd. One of my players, the one who was most open, I guess, to being scared, she got really freaked out at times in Curse of Strahd. And she knew it was Gothic horror, so maybe that's not a problem. At any rate, for those of you who stuck with me through this whole thing, thanks. As it is, I would say the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, which I have no idea how old this is at this point either. But the Call of Cthulhu is a cool system. It seems cool. It's not my first choice. I don't think I'm gonna like rush out to play this, and I'm certainly not going to like, oh, I need to start playing Call of Cthulhu games. I would like to play one. I think I would like to run one or play one, maybe both, to see how it feels. And who knows, I might be hooked once I play it once. But I tend to think that no, I'm pretty sure that what I'll feel instead is, that was cool, and then I won't feel much compulsion or desire to go back. Just based on, I don't know, the overall vibe of this book. The art was pretty good, mostly. I thought the art was pretty good. At times it was really good, and at times it was a little bit not so great. But the overall aesthetic did not make me feel like I had to play this game. Now, maybe if I look at the Investigator's book, whatever the other alternative book that goes with it, maybe I'll feel differently. But just based on the Keeper rulebook, I wasn't as super compelled. At any rate, hope this has been interesting, everybody. Hope you all have a happy Halloween, and I'll see you all in another video.